week's indictment of the Russian lawyer who met with Paul Manafort and Trump's family members is a huge development, since she was the most high-ranking Russian at a meeting that Bob Mueller's investigating in his collusion probe. But Mueller's office didn't just indict her, just like his office didn't actually indict Michael Cohen. The office that charged the Russian lawyer was the top federal prosecutor's office in Manhattan, the Southern District of New York. This is the office with jurisdiction over the Trump Organization and activities involving Trump and his family, which includes anything he did before he became president. So tonight, we turn to a special report why this office is proving so significant and why it's making such pivotal moves on matters adjacent to the Mueller probe. The first thing you need to know is that this story is way bigger than Trump. Very few federal prosecutors' offices have national reputations. Can you think of a current or past U.S. attorney from Texas or California? I can't off the top of my head. But you know several prosecutors who led this Southern District. Preet Bharara, who indicted hackers and murderers and some famous Democratic politicians in New York before Trump fired him. Or Rudy Giuliani, who busted bankers and mobsters and racked up a record 4,000 convictions back when Giuliani was popular across the political spectrum because of that record. Or James Comey, who led the office with a fierce independence and only left for promotion to the Bush DOJ, handing the reins to David Kelly, who prosecuted major terror cases and financial fraud. These prosecutors have long stressed that this office is special. It takes on big targets, and it's aggressive.
We are aggressive. We're appropriately aggressive. That's the history of the office.
I don't care who you are. Nobody's too big or too small to break the law.
We are committed to identifying, targeting, disrupting, prosecuting, and eradicating all of these merchants of poison.
Now, that's the people who run this office. Now, nowadays, you can't understand all the angles in the Mueller probe without understanding this office. But if you're not interested in this topic, you might think, I mean, who cares about the history and posture of this particularly aggressive office? Well, two groups of people for sure: lawyers and criminals. For lawyers, well, it's their field, and for criminals, they learn quickly which prosecutors and investigators are most aggressive in pursuing them. So it stood out when right after Trump's election in November 2016, when he had thousands of open posts to fill in the administration, he chose to personally invite one U.S. attorney to Trump Tower. There are 93 of them, but only one was summoned to Trump Tower in front of the cameras, the U.S. attorney from the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara.
President-elect asked, presumably because he's a New Yorker and is aware of the great work that our office has done over the past 7 years, asked to meet with me to discuss whether or not I'd be prepared to stay on as the United States Attorney, to do the work as we have done it, independently, without fear or favor for the last 7 years. I agreed to stay on.
He agreed to stay on, which did not last, and the meeting itself was already unusual. There's no record of other presidents personally meeting with local prosecutors during their transition, and if Trump wanted political loyalty from the prosecutor running the Southern District, he was unlikely to get it from Bharara. We talked about this when I interviewed him. He took on Wall Street and powerful Democrats in his own party while he was in that post.
We are aggressive. We're appropriately aggressive. That's the history of the office, and I think the public is better for it. People say, are you concerned about going after powerful people, politicians, or hedge fund managers? And I find that a little bit silly because a lot of what we do, the bread and butter of what we do, is go after really, really violent criminals. A guy in a suit with a lot of money doesn't pose much of a threat to our psyche.
Now, you look back on all this right now, it's that office that this week indicts a Russian from the Trump Tower meeting and sends Donald Trump's lawyer to prison. When you look back at it, one can see why Trump's self-interest could be impacted by this office. But who would know that back then? Why was this high on Trump's to-do list? Bharara later said Trump was trying to inappropriately cultivate him, and that Bharara was fired when that failed, an echo of Trump's treatment of another former SDNY prosecutor, James Comey.
It appeared to be that he was trying to cultivate some kind of relationship. So he called me in December, ostensibly just to shoot the breeze and ask me how I was doing. He called me again 2 days before the inauguration, again, seemingly to check in and shoot the breeze. And then he called me a third time after he became president. So the call came in, I got a message. We deliberated over it, thought it was inappropriate to return the call, and 22 hours later I was asked to resign, along with 45 other people.
Now, those 45 other people, those firings could help Trump. His defenders say he was cleaning house like other presidents, and this was not about the Southern District of New York. Except Trump was fixating on the Southern District. In another weird move, he began personally interviewing the candidates for that office.
A radical departure from precedent. The President of the United States is personally interviewing 2 people for U.S. attorney jobs here in New York.
It's a weird thing for a president to meet with potential nominees to be federal prosecutors, to be U.S. attorneys.
While a president has the power to nominate U.S. attorneys, they typically do not interfere or interview prospective candidates.
But Trump appointed one of those candidates that he interviewed, Jeff Berman, to head the office. Now, if Trump's goal was to finally get control of that aggressive office, he seemed to fail because it's been very busy, and that new U.S. Attorney Berman did something we know Trump hates and recused himself from some matters, including the Cohen investigation, and he says he will continue this office's traditions.
Politics does not enter into our decision-making on charging a case. We bring a case when the case is ready to be brought.
Now, while Mueller's investigators asked a lot of witnesses about Michael Cohen, it was that office, the Southern District, that searched Cohen's home and office and indicted him. In the media, some even suggested this meant the very independent Southern District was now acting without Mueller.
This is not the special counsel's investigation. Apparently, he's punted it over to the Southern District of New York.
Why, if Bob Mueller found something that was a red flag, why was it handed off to the Southern District of New York?
What Mueller is doing is saying, look, this is not my area. This is outside of what I'm supposed to be doing, but you guys should take a look at this.
Not exactly, though, because what we've learned is the Southern District was leading the charge while Mueller was still involved.
I think where the press has gotten this all wrong is that because the search warrant was obtained in the Southern District of New York by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, that somehow Mueller has passed this whole matter off.
Right. But he didn't appear to pass it all off. The Southern District pressured Cohen, and Mueller continued to get testimony from him. And they weren't just investigating those payments to women. The New York prosecutors probed Cohen's finances and his campaign spending and the Trump Organization, and how it coordinated with the National Enquirer Company, getting cooperation also from Trump's top money man as part of that Cohen inquiry. Now, we don't know if that person is still working with that office today, but then you have this new indictment of Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya, which relates to a wider money laundering case. So right there, that is 5 avenues of investigation that tee off the Mueller probe and may even serve his ultimate conclusions. Now, at times, this office may be Mueller's queen in a chess game that spans from Washington to Moscow. There's even talk among some legal experts that while Mueller has extracted what he needed, say, from Michael Cohen, it was the New York prosecutors that squeezed him, took the big risk of raiding a president's lawyer's office, and got results. Cohen's own legal advisor recently told me it was the Southern District that prevented Cohen from even getting a chance to complete his case in advance, and he questioned their judgment.
They didn't tell the media. We did not allow Michael Cohen to come in and talk with us. I called it a lack of proportionality and poor judgment.
Proponents of the office say they are proportionately aggressive, meaning Cohen got it rough just like past bankers, mobsters, politicians, or Martha Stewart, who've all objected to this office's approach. It is known to apply the same principles to all. Just ask Rudy Giuliani, or at least the old Giuliani back when he prosecuted crime.
You really try very hard to apply the same principles to everyone. And I found being a prosecutor harder than being a candidate, because the judgments you have to make as a candidate are pretty clear. You go out and argue your case and you do the best you can. As a prosecutor, you really have people's lives in your hands, and you really want to try to be fair.
Fair and aggressive, an approach that has scared many powerful people and apparently got Donald Trump's attention. Now, tonight, this office is operating at the nexus of major issues in Trumplandia. Let's take them together. Pursuing a fugitive Russian who attended the Trump Tower meeting, gathering evidence on a now confessed campaign spending crime from 2016, overseeing the imprisonment of Donald Trump's top lawyer, gathering testimony from Trump's top money man. And those are just the leads that we know about. This office isn't really like other offices, and to understand how it works, it does help to have someone who's run it, a big legal name like James Comey or a Preet Bharara or a David Kelly, who replaced James Comey as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York from 2003 to 2005. Kelly now represents Comey in private practice. He's also former chief of the Organized Crime and Terrorism Unit in that department. And I should mention, we used to practice law together. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Why does this office scare people? Does it look to you like it's continuing an aggressive tradition? And will we hear more from it on any of those cases I mentioned?
Look, historically, as everything you've seen in the last few minutes tells you, it's been an autonomous office, a very aggressive office, a very, pure prosecutorial. I mean, I think it's what everybody in the prosecutorial world kind of aspires to, because it's not driven by politics. It's driven by facts, and not to overuse a cliche, it's driven by, no fear, no favor. And that's what has always been done. And you mentioned, Jeff Berman, who was interviewed by Trump. It was a little bit unusual, but he's done a very good job where he's at, and the proof is in the pudding. He's recused himself, but he did a very good job of encircling himself with a really good, effective prosecutor.
Do you think that's a hard call to raid the president's lawyer's office?
I don't think it's a hard call. I think it's a call that needs to be made with great thoughtfulness, which is what they did.
Do you think it takes some guts?
Takes guts, but again, when you're in that office, that's just what you do.
That's how they roll.
That's what you do.
So when you look at that office unsealing the indictment of this Russian lawyer who was at the Trump Tower meeting this week, so she's now, in the U.S. law's eyes, a fugitive. Why do they unseal that? How does that work? Can they ever catch her?
Sure. So you seal an indictment because you don't want somebody to know about it. It could be for a whole host of reasons. Sometimes the person could be cooperating and so forth. Here they unsealed. Why? She may already know about it. Two, it may help shake the trees a little bit for more witnesses, more information that may be helpful. Three, it may help track her down. Four, it may be in connection with some sort of mutual legal assistance treaty to get her from another country. If she's Russia, I doubt that's the case, but there could be a whole host of reasons for it. And, I think probably at the end of the day, she probably already knows about it, so why bother sealing it?
Do you think they are apparently working closely with Mueller to make sure they coordinate outcomes?
I don't know that look, I think they're certainly not working at odds. Would be my sense. How much they are actually coordinating, I think they might think that it's better on some levels to not coordinate and other levels to just kind of coordinate in the sense that let's stay in each other's swim lanes, stay out of each other's swim lanes and stay in our own.
I showed some of the criticism that they were very hard on Mr. Cohen. He currently has the largest sentence of anyone who's been caught up in this. What do you think of that criticism of the office?
I don't think it's fair criticism. I think the criticism is look, they treat everybody the same. And if you want to come in and cooperate, you better give up everything you ever did. If you stole a candy bar when you were a kid, you better tell them about that. And if you don't want to tell them about it, well, it's not going to work out so well for the cooperation. And that's an ironclad rule there. And if you bend it for Cohen, you have to bend it for other people. And they're not going to do that. Other districts do things a little bit differently. And Bob Mueller's office has taken an approach that a lot of districts do, and they don't take that hard-line approach, but the Southern District wouldn't yield, and I give them a lot of credit for that.
Let me ask you about a criticism that's been lodged against the current district, but also when you were in charge there, which is
criticism when I was there?
A criticism when you were there, sir, that they have a New York taste for going after high-profile defendants. Your response?
I don't buy that. I think what they do is they go after cases where cases are to be made and where they should be made. There's something. Look, I don't think you go after a case, just for the sake of being high profile. Often the case is if it's high profile, it's good because it sends a message to the public that you're doing, that there's no one above the law, that the rule of law stands strong. And
so you're saying there can be a justified law enforcement reason to go hard at someone who is famous or powerful in the public eye?
Sure, but I haven't seen a situation where you go after them hard because they are a powerful person or a high-profile person. You go after them hard because the facts demand it.
Let me read to you what Donald Trump reportedly said to his acting attorney general, Mr. Whitaker, about the Cohen prosecution in the Southern District. Quote, Trump voiced his anger at Whitaker after prosecutors in Manhattan officially implicated the president in a hush money scheme. What does it tell you, as a veteran of this office, that this New York resident turned president was so fixated on this office from the start? What do you think accounts for that? And is that kind of pressure inappropriate?
I think this guy the president is trying to keep his enemies close. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's his MO. You know, you talk about how he rolls. That's how he rolls. And I think that's what he was trying to do. And if you look at his conduct throughout this, going back with Jim Comey and others, you know, if you're not loyal, he's going to get rid of you. And that's what he's done here. And he's tried to influence cases where no other president has tried to exert that type of influence, and is completely inappropriate.
And final question while I have you, because I like to get you when you are available in the news. The Bill Barr nomination, your view?
I knew Mr. Barr back when he was in the Justice Department before. Tremendous respect for him. I'm a little concerned about how he's going to handle having prejudged some issues concerning the Mueller investigation. It's going to be interesting how that gets fleshed out at his confirmation hearings. He's certainly a very capable lawyer, certainly very familiar with and has proven in the past that he abides with Department of Justice traditions. And I hope and I would expect that he would continue to maintain the integrity of the department as he had in the past.
You say prejudge. You think the memo that he privately submitted was a kind of an audition that he would be harsher on those issues?
I don't know if it was an audition. It certainly was an indication. I mean, for whatever reason, he wrote the memo. But what the memo does is I think it suggests that he has a certain opinion about the case. And frankly, I don't know how well informed that opinion is.
David Kelly, a former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Thank you very much for coming on The Beat. I appreciate it. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.